when you face a task like that is how do I define the XML document, how do I create it, how do I send it, how do I receive the data response, and how do I traverse through those data and fetch them out. And the easy way of defining an XML sheet, basically, sorry, is to use transact XML and the schema importer that we've created, and I will show you that as well. Okay, so live demo. Basically, what I'm going to show you, I'll start off by showing you the demo of it, and then I'll show you how it's created. Okay, so this is just a normal GUI shell, as you can see. And if I enter my first name, my last name, my address, and my house number, postal code, city, country, currency, and a bogus control account, and the area which I live in Denmark. And I ship it off. Well, actually, I want to just to put in where I want to save it. Let's save it in here. Okay, so now we're ready to do a test, and basically the response will be one of two. Either they will create the customer in SAP and they will give me a customer number, or there will be an error and I will get an error ID in the message. And the only two things that actually are required when I do this is my first name and my last name. All the rest is just added on information. But I'll put it on for this first test and I'll show you. Well, if I press this test, I will have a customer number assigned to me. And just to show you that this is the real deal, I will show you the request first, where I hit it, and I can show you. If I can find my mouse. I will show you the XML sheet. This may look a bit strange to you, but this is actually the date and time in Denmark right now. And I know most of you are not from here, so you will have a different time. But that will show you that this is actually live. As you can see down here, it's just past a minute since I did the request. What the request looks like is this. As you can see, that's just a perfect representation of what I entered into the GUI. This is what it looks like. This is what a normal SAP XML sheet would look like for a create customer, because it's actually done straight out of that. And the answer. The response document. Simply looks like this. Okay. But just to show you that there actually is a possibility of creating an error, I will try to just remove my last name here and send it off again. As you can see, there's an error now, and that will also reflect on the response document. Okay. So basically, this is a straightforward create customer case in a SAP environment. I can get one of the two things, and it's a very good example also of how you handle XML sheets within Transact XML, because it's very simple, and you can see, you can have a great overview of that. Now I'll show you how that's done. Now, first of all, first task that we have to address is how do we create the definition of the XML sheet in Plex, because what Transact XML basically tries to do is it tries to shield the programmer from actually having to know a lot about how do you create XML, how do you make sure that it's a valid XML sheet, and all that stuff is basically what we're trying to shield you from. So what I do first is I will simply start up the Webcast Transact XML importer, and there's a chance there are two importers that come along with the Transact XML importer, and that's basically a VSDL importer and a schema importer. I only have the schemas here, but basically the only difference between a schema and a VSDL in this particular instance, or in this, not this particular instance, but in this case. And import-wise, the only difference is that a schema can include more than one. No, sorry, a VSDL can include more than one schema. So basically, what we do is we do the exact same. If it was a VSDL, we will have to select the VSDL and then select the schema that we want to import. So there's no difference really. And I'll just find the document that I want to import here. It's in this folder here, the SAP folder. And I will just take the request. That's the most fun. Okay, and then save my import file. Because basically what will happen now is that we will traverse through the schema, and we will create an XML sheet that will be the definition of that schema. And then we will import that into Plex, and I'll show you that. Okay, so now I've defined what schema do I want to import, where do I want to put my XML afterwards, the XML definition of that schema once that's been created. But there's one more thing that I'd like to show you here, and that's the inheritance. A lot of you have probably heard a lot about standard layers in Plex and local modifications to the patterns that CA gives you. And of course, there's also a very real possibility of creating standard layers within Transact XML if you wanted to act in a different way than what we intended it to. And if you want that, then it's simply a question of telling our import tool here which element you want to inherit it from. By default, it will inherit from the Transact XML standards patterns, but you can put anything in here and it will try to inherit from that. I can't, of course, guarantee that it'll work well. That all depends on how good you created your patterns, of course. but that's entirely possible. And now all that's left for me to do is to press generate. And the file has been created. Let's go have a look at that. I put it in here. I'll just show you what it created. A lot of stuff that's probably not very interesting to you, but well, that's not very interesting to look at. It's very interesting because what actually happens is you don't have to type it by hand. In the first examples of Transact XML, you had to create the XML sheets by hand, and that not only is that a hassle, it is also XML is very picky towards typing errors and different capital letters where you should have put a small letter. And if you create an error just one place in the entire XML sheet, it will do absolutely nothing when you try to import it. It simply won't work. It's very picky in that way. So what I do now is I simply take my import tool, my XML import, and browse for the sheet I just created. Which I put here. And I can't see my mouse, so just bear with me. Okay. What happens now is it imports it all, and the way you can see that is basically by it creating this stuff up here. That's all done by using the Plex's XML importer and of course our schema importer. And the XML importer of Plex is of course a necessity for this functionality to work. So this will only work after, I think it's Plex 5.5 or 5.0 where the XML importer came into action. So that's, of course, you can't do it with a lot of older models, but I don't think that's very interesting either because you should probably update them anyway. Now what you get is you get all the elements of the XML document that you can put into SAP. I haven't used all of them, but I have used the personal data. And as you can see, there are quite a few fields here. And remember, keep in mind that if you misspell one, if you put a capital letters where there wasn't supposed to be one, now this is all capital letters, of course, that's not always the case. But if you put a capital letter where there shouldn't be one, Plex simply won't SAP won't receive anything. It'll tell you that it's an invalid XML sheet. So it's a lot of job. It's not a very inspiring job to do. So it's a very nice thing to have this XML importer. Also, what you also get is, as you can see, all these gray functions. All these gray functions are basically what you get from Transact XML and from our attempt to shield you from the hassle of the DOM layer and the creation of the XML sheets. As you can see, a lot of them resembles normal database access, where you get your insert row, your single fetch, your update row, all that stuff. Of course, there are also functions that you wouldn't see on a normal entity, for instance, the get first occurrence and the traverse and fetch. But that's basically because we can't shield you entirely from the DOM layer, because the DOM layer works in a specific way that we have to abide by, of course. And one of the ways is that you have to position yourself in the XML document before you read data. For those of you who are familiar with RPG, it's much like a set lower limit before you read in a database. That's basically just the way the DOM layer works, and we have to abide by that. But that's more or less the only thing that you wouldn't behave like a normal entity. But if we go into this test shell that we've created, now of course I've already created both the response and the request document, as you can see, and those are the ones that we're working on, not the one that I just imported up here. So to show you the test shell that I just showed you, this is the one. And if I go into the action diagram, and to show you local modifications, what basically happens here is, well, I press test, I will fetch the data, and then I will go to the stop to down here and subroutine, sorry, and simply do what I'm supposed to.